And I think what you wanted to do is continue the conversation about starting your own real estate fund, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think you know already, because we've talked about it quite a bit, that there's a whole lot of different corporate organizations that you could use to start your own fund. I mean, you could have a private equity fund or private equity corporation. You could have a real estate investment trust. You could have a mortgage investment corporation, and you could have a limited partnership. I mean, those are at least the basics, right?
Mhm.
And your lawyer and your accountant will have to be brought in before you decide which way you're going to go.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not up to me to tell you that, but I will tell you what my preference is, and I've already told you that. My preference is a private equity fund.
Yeah, that's what I've been kind of doing some research of my own. That seems to be the way to go from what I was seeing.
Well, especially given the level of competence of your corporation, the trust that people have in you, and the projects you're undertaking or the projects that you would green light. And it gives you the most flexibility. I'll bet you when you talk to your accountant and your lawyer, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will anyway. Excuse me. They're probably going to say a limited partnership is best, but generally speaking, at least in my experience, limited partnerships are put together for a single project.
Yeah, I guess that was my. I guess. Yeah, I guess that's one of my questions. Like, what's the like, especially like a few of the projects that are coming up, like the next 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I guess what's the difference of just having like what's the benefit of having a fund?
So,
If
so I mean, a REIT is highly regulated. I'm sure you know that, right? And most of the earnings of a real estate investment trust are distributed to the trust holders, right?
Mhm.
So it's a very regulated vehicle. Limited partnerships, at least in my experience, apply to usually a single project. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not saying that they don't exist where you could have 10 projects in there, but I've only ever seen them for one.
yeah.
All right, so if you had a real estate investment trust, or you had a joint venture agreement, or you had a limited partnership, I
Mhm.
think those would apply to individual projects. And at
Yeah,
least from what I understand, you want is the same thing some of my other developer clients want, which is they want to control a fund that has a number of different projects on the go, that is funding five
yeah,
projects, 10 projects, I don't know,
yeah.
100 projects. And if you look at the US example, private equity funds are typically, they've got, a lot more flexibility. I can't imagine Warren Buffett, for example, wanting to run a real estate investment trust.
Mhm.
Yeah, Buffett's the most successful investor, I think, on the planet, or certainly
Yeah,
one of the most. And and people trust him the way I think they do you. I mean, you're obviously a 60-year younger version of Warren, but I think they'll trust you, and that's important. Now, the issue with a fund where the funds are commingled. So let's say I had $5 million in it. You had $5 million in it. Bill had 5 million. Mary had 5 million. We had a $40 million fund, and there were 40 million, and then we leveraged the fund with some mortgage money from outside parties. So maybe we
Mhm.
have 120 or 150 or even $160 million in projects that are up going on, and our funds as investors are commingled, right?
Yeah,
And as an investor, you can't say, well, I own this project over here, or I own that project over here. You don't. You own part of the fund, and the fund owns or has loaned money or a bit of both to these projects. So
yeah,
as an owner of the fund and as an owner of a developer, I personally think a private equity fund gives you the most flexibility, and I think it's where you want to go. Your accountants and lawyers probably won't like it because they may not be totally familiar with the structure. They've probably done 50 limited partnerships, 100
Mhm.
joint venture agreements. So they
Yeah, yeah,
tend to want to do the things that they're most comfortable doing,
yeah,
and to give them, to be fair, if you did a joint venture agreement with me and Bill and Mary for a project at a certain location, and if something goes wrong, I as an investor and my co-investors, including you, have some redress against that individual project. But
Mhm.
if it's a private equity fund, and there are many examples of them, and there's some in Canada too. I sent you something on Brookfield, right? They're
Yeah.
raising another 14 or 15 billion dollars. So private equity does exist in Canada, but it's much more common in the United States.
Yeah. Um, I guess I had a couple questions. One was on topic. Um, yeah. So if you're just doing like one building, if you just had one building or like two, to say two projects in the pipeline, it would probably be better to just do limited partnership.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. Um,
No.
and the reason for that is the longest journey is the one where you never take the first step. Like that's, I think that's my expression. Um, and what I really mean by that is, let's say you just decide, I've got three investors, because I think you talked to three investors who are keen on the idea. You have three
Mhm.
investors, you do a joint venture agreement on project A. Then you got another three investors, you do a joint venture on project B. When you do that, Jeff, probably project C, D, E, F, G, et cetera, are all going to be the same. They're all going to be joint ventures. So you're going to end up with
Yeah.
quite a different structure. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that
Mhm.
I think where you want to go is you want to have more flexibility and you want to
Yeah.
have more control over the funds. With a joint venture, you have some control, but it's not like a private. I mean, think about Blackstone Group. You know the Blackstone Group of the States, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the housing crisis or the financial meltdown of 2008, 2009, they bought, I think it was 50,000 single family homes through
Mhm.
foreclosure.
Yeah.
Right? They just went out and they bought 50,000 of them. Now they did not have 50,000 joint venture agreements.
No. Yeah.
It would be
Exactly.
impossible, right? Do you understand?
Yeah. 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 That's another thing when I was up front. Like one other like the benefits like you're getting at too is like you have that money in terms at your disposal. So if you see a good property come up, you can act on it quick. Well,
So,
like
so you
you're on the
ask
benefit.
yourself this question: did Blackstone enter into 50,000 limited partnerships,
Like,
50,000 joint venture agreements? No, they did not. Did they have to go to 50,000 individual investors and ask for 50,000 approvals? No, they did
yeah.
not. They went to their
Exactly.
credit committee and they said, look, there's an opportunity here to buy property that we think has real value and will go up in value. We're going,
Yep.
so they do have a board of directors and
Mhm.
they have I'm sure they have a credit committee, and the credit committee said this looks very promising, and they just went out and bought, and it was less than a year. I mean, how long would it take you and me to buy 50,000 homes?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they
100%.
just they bought 50,000 of them, right?
Yeah. My other question is, so let's say you raise let's say $20 million, but you don't have a project for 5 years. Like how does that work? Like is that money sitting in that fund and like who's paying for that or
So what I did, I think that's a great question. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on
yep.
your on your
Yeah, got it.
iPad, but I actually spent a little bit of time this morning on a slide deck because
Okay.
or pitch deck, whatever you want to call it. Because
Yep.
what I think we should do, you and I, if you
Yep.
agreement, is we should have a Zoom meeting, with at least somebody who's familiar with securities law.
Okay.
You must have a lawyer in the firm you deal with who knows security law.
Yep.
So that would be step number one. So we would run this idea past him or her. Then step number two, I know you talked to three investors. We would present it to them and just say, look, this is just a draft.
Yep.
What do you think? So, because what I'm getting at, Jeff, is that as a coach, I'm about helping people do stuff, not just helping people talk about doing stuff.
Mhm. No, exactly.
So I think if you can give me a few minutes, we'll go through this slide deck,
Yep.
and, and of course I'll share it with you later. But then we would set up a meeting. we talk to your lawyer, get his or her opinion on it, and then we would talk to your 3 investor friends and say, look, this is just kind of what we have in mind. What do you think? That's the best way to get feedback.
Yeah, 'cause I think like just with you know, like just three projects off the go that are, you know, already in zoning, good to go. Like my kind of thought is if, you know, if you bundle those in the initial package,
It'd be
and then
fantastic. And
and
I,
then with
hang on a second.
with the land we own and kind of like we can kind of show the pipeline that's, you know,
Right.
in the future. It'd
And
be
in addition to that, I did talk to you about, you would open it up to some other developers and builders that you like and trust. I mean, you would.
yeah,
You would say,
yeah,
look, we've got a fund together, and
yeah.
if you're interested, so it wouldn't just be based on Sierra and your family. You know, there'd be, I mean, think about how many people you know in the business, and maybe they're in a slightly adjacent space to what you do, and you would invite them if they want some funding to apply.
Oh, well, yes, I agree. I said I had one more question before you go on the slide.
Sure.
So how does it work out? Like if let's just use apartment building for example, like would I be able to keep equity like for myself personally, like in our company, or would everything have to be in trust? Like how does that work out?
So the slide deck will answer that,
Yeah. Okay.
I think.
Perfect.
And if it doesn't, we'll make sure it does. All right.
Okay.
So as you know, I don't know why I like the name that I came up with last time we spoke. The
Mhm.
fund, right? Z Fund.
Yeah.
So I just call it Z Fund Inc. And I gave it a tagline this morning: Smart Lending. Okay.
Perfect.
So you got to just differentiate between Sierra and Z Fund.
Yeah.
They're two different companies,
They're
right?
two different. Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, this is a placeholder. If you hate the name, you can change it to something else. But I didn't want to call it the Zaluski Fund. I just wanted to call it the Z Fund Smart Lending. And the number one thing, it doesn't matter whether you're starting a private equity deal, a new real estate project, it doesn't really matter, a tech company. It's very important to differentiate yourself. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so one of the key differentiators, I think, of the Z Fund is that it's allied with Sierra Development. So it's not a subsidiary, it's an independent corporation, but it's allied. There's an alliance there.
Yeah.
There's connections there. So I just stole some pictures of from your website.
Sorry, Bruce. 1 second.
Yeah, you got things to do.
Johnny just came up to us about the 30-30 rule with the lightning and everything and shutting us down.
Is he?
Yes, he is.
Can you work out on stair 6 on the inside?
Pardon?
Stair 6 on the inside? You have your material? Like on the inside of the building?
Inside of the building? No, we don't have that set up yet.
You don't have
No.
No. So you guys are done then?
Well, I'll work on that next, but right now, we're just going to shut down what we got here.
Okay.
The rain was coming. We didn't figure we were going to get the afternoon, but he said there's 30-30 rule. So he said he didn't want to overrule you guys because I'm working for you.
Yeah,
He says, sir.
Okay.
So you're good?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess so, yeah.
And you and I will sit down and talk about some other stuff, the back of the staircases and all these upstands and stuff like that.
Today?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, later on.
Later on.
I'll let you
Perfect.
do your thing.
Sounds good. Sorry about that.
No worries. All right, so one of the key differences, I think, is an alliance with Sierra Development.
Yeah.
The second or additional differentiators, I think, is that the Z Fund would have an independent board of directors.
Mhm.
It would have multiple sources of income, which we'll talk more about in a minute. It would benefit from long-term capital and asset growth, because you remember, one of the things that I'm encouraging you to think about with this private equity fund is that not only would it lend money, but just like Blackstone, it would own part of these projects.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's nothing that says that you can't keep ownership, either personally or through Sierra, including majority ownership in any project that goes to Z Fund for funding. So you've got Z Fund here, you've got a Sierra project. Sierra project is owned, say, I don't know, 50% by Jeff personally and 50% by the family company, Sierra. They go to Z Fund for some funding. The funding comes across. there's an interest charge, there's an application fee, and there might be some equity that goes back to the Z fund. But it means that Jeff and the family still own almost
Yeah,
certainly
so that's,
a
yeah, see,
majority
that's,
of those projects.
see, yeah, that's where I'm getting confused. Like, are you able to, like draw me a flow chart of that?
Yes,
Like,
it's
like,
in, it's in this
that's,
slide deck.
oh, it is? Okay,
It is, yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, you're impatient. I mean, every developer, every entrepreneur I talk to says, just give me the bottom line, right? And I'm a professor, so I tended to have everything in my slide decks or pitch decks, but it takes a few minutes for me to get there. All
No,
right.
no, no.
So the fund could benefit from long-term capital growth and asset growth. It has a separate profit and loss statement. It would leverage its equity. And it would accept third-party applications. So it wouldn't just be the Sierra group that projects that get approved. It would be some others that where you like and trust them. All
Yeah,
right.
just one question. Would that
Yeah.
be, so would I be obligated to the fund? Like, could I just give every job to Sierra Construction, or would I be obligated to go out? Or would that be kind of one of the covenants in the fund, or?
So I think we're really now talking about three companies. Okay, we're talking about the Z Fund. We're talking about the Sierra Group as owners. And
Yeah.
we're talking about Sierra Construction as a construction company.
Okay.
And certainly the fund, as you'll see in a few minutes, absolutely has a say in pretty much every aspect of a project, right? It does,
Yes.
because most private equity firms are not like a mortgage lender. A mortgage lender lends you 65% of the value of the appraised value, and then you do what you want with that money, right? I mean, basically. A private equity fund is more like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has insurance companies, he owns a railroad. I mean, he owns a whole lot of different companies. But those companies, if they are not doing well, he'll put his own management in place to run those companies and fix them, and then hire a new CEO.
Yeah.
So the fund has a lot more influence. You have to sort of, Jeff, you have to stop thinking about it as a joint venture agreement, a limited partnership, general partnership, mortgage investment corporation, a private lender. It's private equity. It's different, and I think it suits your personality better, and I think it suits your needs better. But again, your lawyer may say, "Well, to hell with this. Let's just do a simple joint venture agreement." Right?
Yes.
But you'll end up with 50 of them, and you will not grow nearly as quickly.
No, I agree.
I mean, every project will be different. Every project will be. It's like trench warfare in World War I versus the German Blitzkrieg in World War II. I think you're talking about something that's faster and will. No, it like I said earlier, private equity, because all the funds are commingled. Obviously, if you're not successful, that's bad. But you can have joint ventures that are not successful. So who knows, right? All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So how does Z Fund make any money or any gains, right? Well, I just wrote down a bunch of stuff that happens in these funds. I mean, Warren Buffett, if he was here, probably would have a few others that I don't know about. But anyway, the fund would receive application fees, management fees, professional fees. They would do consulting work. If one of their projects gets in trouble, like I said, you drop a new manager in place or a new CEO in place.
Yep.
You provide financial advisory services. You'll have professional monitors monitor these projects, right?
Yep.
So again, it's not like a mortgage where you just get the money and you do whatever you want with it. The private equity firm is much more involved. You obviously get interest on the funds that you loan. If you have to renew your mortgage, if there's a mortgage in place, which there would be, you'd have to renew it. You get a renewal fee. And then here, we've talked about this before. I think that your fund, Z Fund, would want anywhere from 10% to maybe 30% of the equity of these projects. And the 10% probably would just be bonus equity. You'd get it for free. If you wanted 30%, there'd probably be some money that the is actually invested. But many of the companies I work with in this field, when they approve a project, they're getting like a 10% bonus equity, and they're not paying, maybe they pay, $1 for that. You
And
still,
that's, and what's, yes. And what's that based off of? Like
well, it's because a private equity firm, again, it's not like a mortgage company. A private equity firm could loan up to 100% of loan to value, right? It's up to you. You could,
Yeah.
Your board of directors, your credit committee could say, look, we really like this project. We'll lend you 100% loan to value, but you're going to give us a 10% bonus equity, and that's going to be for free.
Yeah.
It's all, and the nice thing about private equity, it's also one of the things that gets criticized. If you read the popular press, or you watch CNN or something, like, I don't watch CNN, but people do. Not very many, I don't think, but some do.
Not anymore.
What's that?
I said not anymore.
Well, they're so biased. It's
Yeah.
They always sit there like pompous talking heads and say, "Oh, we're not biased. We're not political." Oh my God, they're just lying through their teeth. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't go into politics, but I think it's worthless. But anyway, in the popular press and the mainstream media, private equity does get a lot of criticism because it is probably the most profitable industry on the planet. Wall Street private equity firms probably make more money than anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is what it wants. And you know what the golden rule is, right? He who has the gold rules.
Yep.
Right. And that's Wall Street, or there's the Paris Bourse, and there's Shanghai and whatever. But the big one is probably Wall Street, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know any other industry that pays 30-year-olds $900,000 a year on average?
No, I don't.
I don't know if you make $900,000 a year, in your 30s,
No.
but most
Not
people.
Not US.
Oh, well, that's pretty good if but I did pretty well in my 30s and 40s, but still, I've said it before, Jeff, you may have heard me say it. If I were, if I had a second life, I'd go to New York and learn finance. You can earn a hell of a lot more money in finance than you can in construction or development. You can.
That is true.
And there's
It's
no
funny,
doubt about it.
like growing up, because Sierra's family business, my old man was always just like, whatever you do, don't get in construction. It's the stupidest thing. For the amount of work you do, you don't get paid at all. And then as I got older, I understood that. I'm like, yeah, screw construction.
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, listen, I like the development business. I like building stuff. You do too. But the reason we've spent now, I think, two and a half coaching sessions on private equity is because developers have realized that they're working their asses off. Builders are working their asses off to make the lenders rich.
Yeah.
I mean, today, construction financing could be, 10, 12%, 4% fees, renewal fees, all the stuff that we've got on the page here. So, and I'm not criticizing them. They could get they could get paid like that. Why shouldn't they? It's like saying that, oh, it's terrible that an NBA player makes $35 million a year, a baseball player makes $35 million a year, or Taylor Swift makes, I don't know how much she makes, a few $100 million a year. Well, what the hell? I mean, they have talent, right?
Yep.
And talent attracts money. And so obviously finance is probably the top paying industry in the world, other than entertainment at the very high levels, right? I mean, and again, in sports, like, you're not 7'1" or 7'2", so you can't play in the NBA, right?
No. Exactly.
So if you don't have, the genetic good looks and talent of Taylor Swift, or the genetics of a LeBron James, you could go into finance and make just as much money as they do.
Yeah.
Okay. So the bonus equity participation. The other thing that's underneath that is something I told you about. This is new. I haven't had anybody try it yet, but I'm going to try it at some point, I think. And certainly some of the people I coach will try it, where they might say, look, I don't want the 10% bonus equity, or I don't want 30% equity. But what I do want is I want a 5% royalty on revenues and any sales, right? And for a 20-year period or a 30-year period. And you leave the capital structure untouched by you, the fund, but you're benefiting from the equity gain. So let's say you loan some money to a project that was worth $50 million, and they had rents of I don't know, $2 million a year, and you got 5%, you get $100,000 a year. And then if they sell the damn thing, they build it for 50 million, they sell the damn thing 10 years from now for 75 million, you get 5% of that too.
Yeah.
So it has some elegance to it, but I think that is something unique that I've added to this. And as I said, I don't think I've seen anybody else do it, but I suspect that if you tried it, a few other people I work with now will try it. It might be quite successful and work not only very well for the fund, but also for the entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, we talked about that, like the meeting for last. Yeah, it's definitely.
Well, good, you remembered. And as you know, I think it's very important in any mortgage documents that you don't have just power of sale, you have foreclosure rights. For a private equity firm, that is really, really the sine qua non of any mortgage. That is, that if the entrepreneur screws up, the equity fund can say, we're foreclosing, you kick the entrepreneur out, and you take over the project, and it's your project. Which leads me to the credit committee and to your participation. You would not fund any projects, whether it's your own projects or a third party, that you don't want to own yourself if things go wrong.
Exactly.
All right. So if it's an abattoir in Alberta, and what do you know about running abattoirs? Probably not very much.
I know what it is.
I don't know anything about running an abattoir, and all I know is I don't want to know anything about it. And I certainly wouldn't lend to an abattoir, because if something goes wrong, what am I going to do with the damn thing?
Exactly.
You have to have skills, right? So you would know something about industrial buildings, you would know something about retail plazas, you'd know something about, housing, because you have a house building division, so there's lots of areas where you would approve projects, but not in areas that you're unfamiliar with and you don't want to own in case something goes wrong.
Exactly.
All right, because if you're lending 100% loan to value, or even 90% loan to value, and something goes wrong, it's as if you own it anyway.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, and that's why you have monitors, like up on the list there, you'll see professional monitors, because you've got to know when things are going wrong. And then, of course, whether it's your equity participation or your royalties, there's buyouts, there's sales, and there's other exits that are possible for any of the assets held by the fund.
So, I guess professional fees, consulting work, professional monitors. So is that someone can that be in-house with the Sierra Construction Group, or does that have to be kind of third party, like that they have to be under the fund umbrella?
Right. So one of the things that I said right up off the top is that there's an alliance between Sierra and the Z Fund, right? There's an alliance there. And it does mean that if you have the skills within Sierra, which I think you do, to do much of this work, then you would loan those people to the fund to work for work in this capacity, and you would bill the client for that, right? Whether it's your own project, you're going to bill yourself, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think eventually, as the fund grows, you'd want your own people in there, but just
Yeah, no, I think initially you would not. The one difference is that you would want to have to make sure that you live up to your obligations. You would want to have, let's say you had a board of 3 people and a credit committee of 3 people. You'd want at least one of those 3 to be independent.
Yes.
Right. And I would listen very carefully to my independent board member and my independent member of the credit committee. If they say, look, this is a really bad idea, and here are the reasons why, at least you would seriously listen to them, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's important, but you would still control both, obviously, Sierra and the fund itself. You would, out of 3 directors, I would imagine you'd appoint 3. Sorry, 2. If you had 5 directors, you would appoint 3, but I don't think you would have a board larger than 3.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, if it was the size of Warren Buffett, I don't know how big Warren Buffett's board of directors is, but it's probably bigger than 3.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. But for a small fund like this, so I worked on a phase 1 or stage 1 raise for the fund. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just invented these numbers this morning.
Yep.
Okay, and like I said, I'm gonna share the slide deck with you after we finish, and you can
Yep.
go through it and you can make any changes. But I thought, what if we raised $20 million and that represented 30% of the equity of the fund?
Mhm.
So whoever is putting in 20 million bucks will end up with 30% ownership in the fund, and the balance would be with Sierra, 70%. I just put in, it's an arbitrary number, 250,000 Canadian dollars as a minimum investment, which would mean,
Sorry, so 30, so 20, so 20 million, you get 30% equity.
correct.
So that means, so like the fund itself is 20 million or?
Well, I'll come back to that in a sec.
Yep.
All right. So I put in a minimum investment of $250,000. It's quite arbitrary. So you could have 40 outside shareholders.
Yeah.
Right? Raise that, and each of them would get just under 1% of the company. So 30%. And I just put in, they would get preferred shares. You remember, preferred shares don't vote, right?
Yeah.
So they get preferred shares at 10 cents. So they're $250,000 buys them 2.5 million shares, because we're hoping that their shares will go from 10 cents to maybe $1, right?
Mhm.
So and people love it when they've got millions of shares. Oh, I got 2.5 million shares in the fund, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could have made that 25 shares, but it's inflation. And I put in here, this is a big bonus, by the way, that they have a warrant to acquire another 0.25% of the company to bring them up to 1% at any time up to 2 years after completion on the same terms and conditions, including price. That's a big bonus, right? So if the fund is doing well, within 2 years, they say, look, I'd like to acquire another 0.25%. So they'd have to chip in a bit more money at that time.
So the preferred shares, that's on. So if you put $250,000 in, you get preferred shares.
Yep. And then I put in at the bottom that Sierra, because we talked about this last time, would put in $1 million, and you would end up with 233 million common shares, 70% of the company.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure I did this exactly right. I better check something here. I started fairly early this morning, so I might have made an arithmetical error, but let me just check something. So you would have 233,333,333 shares. That's just the way it worked out. And the outside investors would have, I think it is 40 of them. Yeah, they would have, I want to make sure I get this right. They would have times 10 is 25 million. They would have 100 million shares. Right? Okay. Okay. So you've got 333 million total shares. Yes, that works out, but I think the company valuation isn't quite right. Oh, shoot, sorry. I don't think that this last point here, this $33 million number is quite right. Let's see. No, I guess it is. I guess it is. Yeah, I think that's all right. Anyway, I almost flunked my engineering accounting course, so I'm not an accountant. All right. I think we'll have your before we do a presentation, we'll make sure those numbers are right. But
Exactly, yeah.
what I'm basically saying is that you would own 70% of the company for $1 million,
Yeah.
and they would own 30% of the company for $20 million. So there's a big lift there for you, if you see what I'm getting.
Okay. That answers one of my questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a huge. And by the way, if your name was Mark Zuckerberg, you would be buying shares at 0.00001 cent, and your investors would be buying them at $20, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you know, how did Mark Zuckerberg become like one of the richest people on the planet? Well, because he had a share structure where, you know, he bought in at this number, and his public shareholders are, you know, somewhere up
But
in Jetstream, right?
yeah, yeah.
All right, so there is a big lift here for you. You know, you would own 70% of a company worth, I don't know, whatever it is, for $1 million.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And you know, and people will ask, well, why should you? Well, because you're going to create all the value here, right? The
Yeah, exactly.
investors have money, but they don't have any of the skills that you have.
And then after that $1 million investment, is the fund is like the fund owner? They typically put more money in there as the time goes on, or how does that work?
Not necessarily. This is, you know, what I did was I said, we'll raise 20 million for phase one.
Yeah.
But if there was a second raise, right, you might increase the money that you're contributing if it's successful. You will. If it's something you don't want to do, you could
Mhm.
accept dilution.
Yeah.
Or you could start another fund. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, Blackstone. I'm sure Blackstone has, you know, like Brookfield. You know, I think Brookfield must have 10 or 12 of these things. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's nothing that says you only have to have one Z fund. It could be Z Fund 1, Z Fund
Yeah.
2, Z Fund 10, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, these are decisions you can't make today,
No, yeah, makes sense. No,
right? So
yeah.
let me tell you, if we raise $20 million of investor money for 30% of this company, and you put in $1 million for 70% of it, that would be a good event for Sierra and for you.
Yes.
But I think it would also be a good event for the investors because it gives them access to things that they can't get otherwise, right?
Yeah.
On their own. But I mean, the market will tell us if this is too pricey, and the three investors say, well, this is ridiculous. We want a better deal. Well, it's like anything else. It's a negotiation, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if these numbers will work or not, but this is not out of the ballpark. Trust me on this one. Blackstone does a fund, or Brookfield, or any of these other private equity. You know, it's heads they win, tails you lose, basically. Right? I mean, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
they're not doing it because they're nice guys. They're doing it because they're very good at what they do. They do
Mhm.
tend to make money for their people. Like those 50,000 homes that Blackstone bought in, I think, 2009, 2010. I don't know what they paid for it. My memory says something about like $1 billion or $2 billion. And eventually I think they went public with it at a valuation of 10 billion. So investors did pretty well.
Yeah.
But they did fantastically. I mean, their internal rates of return would be just astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now I had an alternative here, and we will have to talk this through at some point. A lot of investors would prefer to invest, and we've talked about this before, partly in equity and partly in debt. So what I did was this is what I showed you just a moment ago, and this stuff with yellow is an alternative, okay?
Yep.
And I think this alternative might be more attractive to an investor. Something like this. So instead of raising 20 million, we would try and raise 26 million. 20 million of that would be equity, and 6 million would be debt. So if you look at the second line there, again, the 250,000 minimum goes into the equity of the deal, and they would loan the fund 150,000 in debt at 8% for 5 years, interest only.
Okay.
So the minimum amount would now be $400,000, and about a third of that would be debt. Because a lot of people like the idea of having some equity in this business, but also having some debt and having a defined exit, i.e. you have to pay me back in 5 years.
Yeah.
So everything else underneath that stays the same, but we raise a little bit more money. And I can tell you, we might have to change those numbers. Maybe it ends up being 150,000 in equity and 250,000 in debt. It might be, right?
Mhm.
But that I know for a lot of investors, they really like that.
And so that's on, if they did 150,000, that's like, Z Fund would be paying interest on that from
Yes,
the
yes,
baby.
Z Fund, yeah, Z Fund would, but that's why you have to charge, the borrower, 10 or 11, 12%, you're charging them probably 10 or 11%, and you're charging anywhere from 2% to 5% in fees, right?
True.
So there is a spread there. So the fund will make the spread, right?
Mhm.
But there is, and what we could do is we could make the interest cumulative and paid at the end, but I probably wouldn't do that.
Okay.
All right, but we could, I mean, just to ease the pressure on the fund.
Yeah.
All right, we could do that. And then what you and I would want to have, we do not want to do a meeting with 3 investors or 10 investors and not have a sign-up form.
Mhm.
All right, and typically my sign-up forms are like 1 page. And I don't know if you're probably too young, but there was a FedEx commercial when FedEx was a relatively new company, where a boss is sending, one of his top sales guys to, I don't know, another city, Chicago or something like that, to go to some kind of a show, a fair, a trade show. And the boss says to, his sales guy, have you got the contracts? Yeah, I got the contracts. You sure you got the contracts? I got the contracts. The sales guy goes to the show. He's having a great weekend. He's making all kinds of sales. And then he realizes he has to call his boss because he forgot the contracts. And so the tagline at the end was, if it absolutely positively has to get there, FedEx.
Yeah.
It was a great ad. So if you're doing any kind of a pitch, I don't care what it is for a construction contract, right? For development permission, you want to have an agreement that you've already drafted up, because when somebody says yes, you want to be able to get their signature, right?
Yeah.
So think about FedEx, all right? If it absolutely positively has to be there, FedEx, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I want to sign up with the Z Fund. What do I get for my $250,000? 0.75% ownership, 2.5 million worth of pref shares, a warrant to acquire another 1/4 point. And what do I have? What security do I have? Now, I think I told you prefs have all kinds of security provisions, right? Are you familiar with these?
No, I'm just,
Okay, so I'll explain to them.
No.
So preferred shares are exactly what they sound like. They're preferred. You would own the common shares, means you have all the votes, but preferred shares have some protection, right?
Mhm.
For example, there's dividend protection for preferred shares, means that the company can declare a dividend for preferred shareholders without declaring a dividend for you with a common shareholder, but not the other way around.
Okay.
All right, so you can't just say, well, we did really well this year. I'm going to vote myself a big dividend, but I'm not going to give my preferred shareholders anything.
Yeah.
All right. So if you can declare a dividend for yourself, of course, but you have to extend the same privilege to your minority shareholders.
Yeah.
All right, that's called dividend protection. There's also tag-along provisions. So if somebody comes along and says, I love this fund, now you're an old dude, say 50 years from now, I'd like to buy this from you, and they make an offer for your common shares, that's fine, but they also have to make the same buyout offer to the minority shareholders.
Okay.
All right. If something goes wrong and you wind up the fund for some reason, this is how when you wind up a firm or you sell it, here's what happens. The debt gets paid first, then the preferred shareholders are dealt with, and you as a common shareholder are last to get to exit. All right. So if there's not enough money to redeem your equity for some reason, you're out. Right. So common shareholders, you have control, you have all the votes, but preferred shares are just what they sound like. They're preferred. And if I'm an investor, if an investor says, no, I want common shares because I want to vote, that investor is not an investor, he's a partner.
Yes.
And you don't want a partner.
No.
So if somebody says, I want votes, you say, you know what? Start your own fucking fund. All right. I mean it. You just tell them, no, you're going to run. I mean, Warren Buffett doesn't really answer to anyone, maybe to his wife, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. And I won't go into all the other details. You can read this when you have time.
Yep.
So what is my investment? How much and when? This is very typical. When they sign a reservation agreement, they give you, or it goes to your lawyer in trust, $10,000 bucks, right? Something like it could be 15,000, could be 20, but it's not a very big number. And it's refundable. So if they don't really like the deal, then they have about 3 weeks to do some due diligence, to talk to their accountant, to talk to their own shareholders if they want, their own board of directors, their lawyer. They have 3 weeks to do due diligence, and if they say, yeah, I really like the deal, then 2 weeks later they give you the balance, the 240 grand. All right, something like that. And something that people forget all the time, Jeff, all the time in these reservation agreements, is to make sure you have their contact information. I have seen reservation agreements, 10 of them. You don't know I mean, they're signed, but you can't even read their signature, and you don't know who the hell they are. They don't know their cell number. You don't know their email address. So I know this is trivial, but we actually want their name and their phone number, their email address, their street address, all that good stuff. All right. And then just thank you. For more information, talk to Jeff.
Perfect.
And there's a lot more slides there, but we don't have to go through them all. I'll send you the slide deck. But that's the kind of thing that we have to work through, you and I, with a lawyer. And we have to, we have to massage the numbers a little bit. Again, it was just, these are a lot of the stuff that I did this morning, just placeholder stuff.
Yeah. No, it's good. That answered a lot of my questions.
I think it does, but it probably not all. You asked very good questions.
So, yeah, I guess, but one question wasn't answered. So let's say I raise that 20 million,
Yeah.
but I have no projects on the go. Like, so those investors, they're not getting paid until a project's complete.
Yeah, so
If you go option
one of the things that I think we would do is we would fight a war on two fronts.
Mhm.
Okay? I think you and I should try and raise the 20 million. I think we can do that. But at the same time, we should have some applications ready to go. Whether it's from your company or somebody else's, I don't really care. Do you understand?
Yeah. That's like the good timing of this is I have
I think you have three, right?
Yeah, I got three. Like one's 4 8 stories and 6 12-story buildings. So like that alone is the fun there. And then I think we went over it quickly, the old McCormick's building in London, which is about 10. We sold some land, so 10 acres downtown London.
Wow.
And then another apartment building that's coming up that we're just working through that we talked about for Sally Creek. The one we're going either SDA model or that. So we have some projects that that can
so
attract some
I just want to go back into this slide deck here. And I'm going to add in here another slide. Okay. The first three applications. So which one is, give me the first one again.
So go Athlone Apartments.
Say it again.
Athlone Apartments.
How do you spell that?
ATHLONE. No, sorry, no E.
Like that?
Yeah.
And which town is it in?
Woodstock.
Oh yeah. And how many apartments?
How does it total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 or 7. Say 6.
6 apartments or 6 apartment buildings?
6 apartment buildings.
About
500 units total.
500 doors. Okay, so the first project is Athlone Apartments, Woodstock, 6 apartment buildings, 500 doors. The second one.
Yeah. Do Sally Creek Apartment. So that'd be a single building, 7 stories.
Oh, wait a second, where's Sally Creek again?
Woodstock.
Okay. I love the name Woodstock. Did I tell you I went to the actual Woodstock in New York last summer?
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the Woodstock Festival?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't born then, obviously, but I went to Bethel, New York, where the festival was held, and I went to the festival site because for my generation, it was quite a meaningful,
Yeah.
weekend. I have to tell you, I hated the festival site. I absolutely hated it.
Oh,
Um, I'll tell you why. I mean, as a developer, I know it's a bit of a distraction, but as a developer, I'll tell you why I hated it. It's relevant to you. In 1968, when that festival was held, the Not in My Backyard guys, the NIMBYs, complained bitterly, oh, these hippies are coming to town. There's going to be noise. There's going to be traffic. There's going to be pollution. This is, we don't want it. And the local farmer who had leased his farm to the promoters of the concert backed out, I think, like 8 weeks or 10 weeks before the festival.
Yeah.
And they scrambled to find another location and a farmer who said basically to F off to all the NIMBYs, all right? And that they put on this festival that is world famous, and I'm sure 200 years from now, people will still, be talking about it.
Yeah.
When you go to Bethel, New York today, they have created on the festival site Disneyland. And the same assholes, excuse my language, but the same assholes who opposed those young fellows. And by the way, the young fellows lost money on the concert as a result. They lost money.
Yeah.
Those assholes who are now, in their 60s and 70s are running Disneyland saying, oh, the home of Woodstock. You go in there, it's just like Disney World or Disneyland. They take all the money, and it's totally commercial. It was horrible. They have the amphitheater. They have all kinds of ways of, taking money out of, they have all the trash and trinkets that you could buy. It was so commercial that to me, my wife wanted to go. We went to some concerts there. I really, I hated everything about it because it was such a phony bunch of guys.
Yeah, just a big tourist trap basically now.
It's a big tourist trap. But here's one of the things I did. I left the amphitheater and the Disneyland part of it, and I walked out, and it was just at sunset. I walked out of what is really a theme park. What did you call it? A tourist trap. I walked out of the tourist trap. I walked up the ridge, and I crossed the ridge, and there below me was the original field where the festival was held. And I stood by myself, nobody around, and as the sun was going, it was a beautiful night, and I could imagine 500,000 kids peacefully listening to, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and all the other entertainers. And that was fantastic.
Yeah.
So the reason I tell you that is when I built the Palladium, the Canadian Tire Center, I ran into the same NIMBYs, right? The same kind of people.
Yeah.
And again, I'll try and make it quick, but I'll tell you one story just because you'll remember these stories as you get older. We went through a 13.5-week Ontario Municipal Board hearing. People were opposed to us building this new building, and we went through a 13.5-week Ontario Municipal Board hearing. It cost me about $3 million in legal fees and planning fees to conduct that hearing to defend our project. It was quite expensive. That's $3 million back then.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be today, but quite a bit more. And I was on the stand for 3.5 days being cross-examined by a lawyer, telling me I'm an asshole, my project stinks. It was not pleasant. And there was a farmer by the name of Andy Rhodes, a farmer. He was one of the leading oppositions, he was a rabble rouser. And Andy said, he organized hundreds of people to come to the hearing, and he came every day for 13.5 weeks in the summer of 1991. How a farmer can get away from his farm for 13.5 weeks in the summer. I mean, in Ottawa, you could certainly do it in the winter, but in the summer, I don't know how. Anyway, we won that hearing. And we went ahead, we built our building. 10 years after the building was opened, CBC, which is again a bleeding heart mainstream media, is a piece of garbage as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, CBC sent 2 cameras out to Andy Turros to interview him on the 10th anniversary of the opening of the building. And there was a young woman there, you know, a lefty, interviewing Andy. And she said, Mr. Turros, as a leading opponent of the Palladium, how do you feel about, you know, the building now on its 10th anniversary? And, you know, his farm was here, the building was over here, it's quite close.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, no, I was never an opponent of the building. And there's 2 cameras, and you see this young woman, she goes, what? You know, she's thinking her editor has sent her out on a stupid mission. He said,
Yeah.
oh, no, I was never an opponent. I just wanted to make sure that they went through the process properly and they didn't cut any corners, but I wasn't an opponent. I was there to make sure that they, and then he goes on to say, I happened to watch this newscast. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, oh, and I was actually always in favor of it, and it's been a good neighbor. The traffic past my farm, he has a farm gate marketing. You know what farm gate marketing is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a stall, and he sells a lot of stuff. He said the traffic's gone up, my sales have gone up. It's been a great neighbor. I've done nothing but benefit from it.
Your blood must have been boiling.
No, it wasn't.
No?
You know, my blood was boiling in Bethel, New York, at Woodstock. It was, because these
Yeah.
people were like but he's a farmer, and he was doing better, and he was making more money. And farmers, as you know, work very hard. So I was happy for him. But
Yeah.
the reason I tell you these stories is that you will have a lot of experiences like this over your career. And one of the things I've learned to do is to try and keep cool as best I can and try and keep a perspective. But even your most vocal opponent might one day become your most vocal supporter. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is true.
Anyway, there you go. All right, enough of that. So let's go back to the slide deck. Sorry about that if I distracted us. So Sally Creek Apartments are in Woodstock, and give me the yield again.
So 7 stories. I'm not sure the number of apartments right now are still in design.
Well, approximately, would it be 80?
Yeah, around 80. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, all of this is subject to revision. All right, what's the next one?
McCormick's building in London.
Okay.
And then that one's going to be
10 acres.
Yeah, so that one's going to be so 3 apartment buildings, either 10, 12, still arguing with the city. And then the existing building, I'm not sure what we're doing with that yet, or how many units.
So did I describe it right?
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can find them. Did I spell it right? McCormick?
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
No, let's go here. So is this the McCormick building here?
That's it there.
Wow. Is this the inside?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually it's quite the building. Like, we bring engineers through there, like they're just in marvel, because when this was built, it was they took all the best features out of the big factories in Europe. So the spans they have in this building, like they're tiny in today's comparison, but back then, like, the spans are huge.
Can you say that again?
So when they built this building, they took all, like, the best kind of features of all the big European buildings.
Yeah.
So the spans in between the columns, you can see by those pictures, they're not very big, but back then those are huge spans.
That's beautiful. What is the ceiling height here?
I forget off the top of my head. It's not overly tall. I forget.
Hang on.
Yeah, we picked that property up for $1.
Does it have a lot of pollution on it?
Quite a bit, but we had not over that, but we ended up getting $4 million in brownfield grants to clean it up.
Perfect.
Basically for it.
This is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. We bought this back in 2005. It's been ongoing with the city since then.
Is this the site here?
Yeah.
Have you been fighting with the city?
Oh yeah,
London is terrible that way.
terrible. They're the worst. Yeah, we almost settled. Actually, if you go back to that map there, so the bottom.
Hang on a second.
Right.
I'll go over here. Okay.
Yes. So the bottom right of that corner of the property there.
Yeah.
They're putting London's doing rapid bus transit.
Wow.
They just started. So one of the stops actually right in front of here.
That's fantastic.
So they want the bottom corner of that lot because what's that? Ashland Avenue. It doesn't line up street across, so they want to put a stop there. So to take that corner off, make a turning lane for the bus. We agreed to the city like, yeah, we can work with that, but that's where our parking goes. So it takes about 90 parking spots.
Yeah.
So we went and got an appraisal done.
Yeah.
Half paid by us, half paid by the city.
Yeah.
And the appraisal came back at $3.7 million.
Wow.
Because we got to build a parking structure to take up those parking spots. And then the city of London goes, whoa, no, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at this raw land, blah, blah. So the city of London went and got their own appraisal and came in at $210,000. So we actually had arbitrary booked for end of February.
Yeah.
But the court, something in their paperwork side of it got messed up. So it got pushed. It's getting pushed back. We don't have a date yet. But even like we said we're good, City of London said we're good, but the court said they couldn't do it. So and then there's a bunch of there's about 1,000 issues. We agree on one thing, and then the planning department comes back with another. Like the other big one was they wanted these walkways. Basically, that property split up into 4 quadrants with walkways down the center each way, and we would have to pay for them. They wouldn't count into our parkland dedication. No,
that's ridiculous.
And they would not. And then we had to look after them and perpetuity. We had to look after it forever. And it turns out like the Parks Department didn't even want it. Like no one in the city of London wanted it. Just the planning department just tossed it in there, and they wanted it. So we fought off that for a few years. Like it just been ongoing battles.
Yeah,
but it's getting close.
All right, listen. What is the street address in London?
Dundas Street.
Dundas. So Dundas.
Yeah, be to your right. See that Dundas. If you type in the McCormick factory, Kellogg's factory, it's right across.
Hang on a second. I'll go back to this. No, sorry, over here. So it's on the corner of Dundas and Ashland.
Yeah.
Right. Oops.
Yeah, there you
go. All right. So, okay, here it is here.
Yeah.
Does it include the Inglis Cycle Center?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It includes this whole block here.
No, it's just that just that block there. Yeah.
So I'm just going to measure from here.
No, sorry. The English cycle, it stops there. That's where the line goes straight across.
Okay, so I'm going to measure it. So does it go to about here?
Yeah.
And then does it come across like this?
Yeah, exactly.
More or less.
Yeah.
And then down here. All right. So this says the total area is about, that actually is a little bigger than 10 acres.
Yeah, we sold some land off to Extendicare.
Okay.
So that's minusing the land we already sold.
Yeah. Well, I'm just making it a
Yeah.
little smaller.
Overall,
All right. So I'll just get it down. Yeah. So that's about 10 acres there.
Mhm.
A little bit smaller. I'll just make it a tiny bit smaller. Okay. Well, a little bit smaller. Hey. Yeah. So that's about 10 acres. So you've got that site there, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
All right. I'm taking a picture of that. No, can we spend a few minutes on this before we go?
Yeah.
I'm just for the hell of it, because I do know something about urban development.
Yeah,
So-
if you want after this, we can. I can send you kind of the
Well,
drawings we have on.
I just want to tell you, just I got a couple of suggestions for you, but I'm just going to grab a picture of it here. Like I said, I'm going to share the slide deck with you, so you'll have it, and of course the recording too.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's called the McCormick Building. It's a great name. Don't change the name.
No, definitely not. Yeah, it's nice too. The only 'cause it's the only thing the requirements for kind of historic is to keep the white front and the chains holding the balcony. That's only constraints on it, which is very nice.
But would you keep the existing building, or are you going to tear it down?
No, we're keeping the existing building.
I think you should.
Yeah, no, the thing's built like a bomb shelter. Like structurally, it's very very well kept. So yeah, we're turning. It's kind of a bad layout, so we're thinking maybe student housing or something in there.
Well, we're going to look at this for a second. Just give me one more minute.
Yeah.
So, all right. So here we are here, and I'm assuming that this is, if you can see my cursor moving, this is the building that you're keeping here.
Yeah, exactly.
And whatever this is just garbage.
Yeah, that's already all demolished.
All right. So I'm going to clear the measurements, and I'm just going to measure the distance here like this. All right. Is that it? Did I get is this kind of the floor plate like this, more or
Yeah.
less?
Yeah, basically, yeah, that whole building there. Yeah.
All right. So the floor plate is about 40,000 square feet, correct?
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't measure it over here. So you can see that this is the floor plate here. All right.
Mhm.
So it's a pretty big floor plate, right?
Yep.
I'm just going to grab this picture too. You'll see where I'm going in a minute. I'm going to grab that picture there. I'll put it in the slide deck. So one of the things that you'll know is that the existing building floor plate around 38,000 square feet. So would you agree with this, Jeff, that if you wanted to turn it into student housing, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good idea. If you wanted to turn it into student housing, you wouldn't be able to do much with the interior because it's just too far from windows, right?
Yeah, that's the constraints on it. Is the like the interior columns and the windows.
The interior columns I don't worry about as much as I do about the distance from the windows. I mean, it looks at 40,000 square feet. What's the square root of 40,000 square feet? It's 200 feet, right?
Mhm.
So 200 times, no, yeah, 200, yeah, it's 40,000. So, 200 feet. Um, uh, so your apartments around the outside are fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But what's the depth of a typical apartment? 35 feet?
So yeah, so on the inside we're doing we're cutting the floor out, doing kind of a not really an atrium, but cutting the floor out to get more.
So you would do an atrium.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
I like that. All right, so let's go back, and,
Yeah, when I get back to the office, I'll send you kind of the
yeah, sure.
mock-up
But,
floor plan. too.
just give me a second. I want to show you something. Maybe I've already shown it to you, but I don't think I did.
Or actually, I think I got it on here.
I don't know if you've seen this. Maybe I sent it to you. Nah, got to Scott Davis. So UBC has had incredible success with this project. So I'll just go back here. So what they have is they've been building, UBC has been building student accommodation,
Mhm.
and they've been using micro suites as opposed to shared roommates, right?
Yeah.
So they don't everybody gets a micro suite, and they're so small at UBC, they don't call them micro suites anymore, they call them nano suites.
Oh yeah.
Nano's very small. Like
Yeah.
micro, I think, is 10 to the -3, and nano is 10 to the -6.
Yeah.
So I think micro is 1/1000th and nano is 1/1,000,000th. So these are so tiny. Listen to this. These micro suites are 145 square feet.
How much?
145 square feet.
Jesus.
All right, and I'll show you how they work. So here it is. And the reason I'm showing you this is if you look at this window here, you can see it looks into an atrium.
Yep.
So they're thinking exactly like you.
Mhm.
So here is here's their bed, which when you flip it up turns into a desk. So you pull this down, it becomes a bed. Put it up, it becomes
Yep.
a desk, right? Bed, desk, bed, desk. Over here you have a kitchen, a little kitchen. You have some uppers. You have a little bit of a seating area here. You have a full bathroom, believe it or not, full bathroom. And there's a picture of the kitchen with the uppers, and you have a little work area as well. And I'll send you this too. Here are the floor plans.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
come
that'd
in
be great.
here, you got a closet here, you got a bathroom here, you got the desk that turns into a bed, the bed that turns into a desk, the
Mhm.
kitchenette, and they call this storage space, but it's really not much. This
So
is
UBC is doing this themselves, or
yeah.
someone's doing it for you?
I think they did it themselves.
Oh yeah.
And there might even be a YouTube video. Hang on, just give me 1 second. I'll see if this thing still works. But I really like this idea. I think it's terrific.
Yeah, and it's actually because it's a great location because it's right in between Fanshawe College and Western University.
Fantastic. Oh, I know London quite well. I've got a few clients in London. So can you see my screen here?
Yep.
So I'll just hang on. I've got to stop sharing. I'm going to share it so that you can actually listen to it, because if I don't allow it, share the sound, optimize. Okay, there we go. You should be able to hear it.
Today is move-in day at UBC. Thousands of students living in residence and their parents are on campus trying to get settled for the new school year. Student housing can be pricing even if it's shared. But as Allison Hurst reports, a new initiative has some lucky students living alone in spaces that are affordable by any Vancouver standard.
Oh my God.
Yvonne Coe documents her first look in her new apartment.
This is so nice.
All 140 square feet of it.
Look how big the window is. I love this.
She's in one of the nano suites in UBC's new Exchange building.
We've opened our first 71 nano units this summer, and they rent for $700 a month.
A steal compared to most campus housing.
It includes a full bathroom with a full kitchen, a few less appliances than other larger units.
And if you're wondering where the desk is, just fold up the bed.
Right now I'm just trying to fit everything else into my room.
That's a concern many students and parents share as 5,000 move in across campus.
She has lots of stuff. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much stuff she brought.
Don't know if I can fit it in my room, but we'll see. I got a lot of extra stuff, a huge fridge for a tiny room, but we'll see how it goes.
And Maya Sumji will have to share that space with a roommate.
I don't know her yet, but I'm excited to meet her, and maybe we'll be best friends, who knows.
Wonderful. I think it's very exciting.
So could you see it?
Yeah.
And you were able to hear it too?
Yep.
Okay, good. The reason I show you that is, when I was at McGill University a long time ago, I had a roommate, we were two to a room. And my roommate, I was a young engineer, 45 hours of classes and labs and lots of homework. He was an art student, and his speciality was listening to Neil Diamond records and smoking weed. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd be playing to this day, I can't stand Neil Diamond. I'm sure he's a great artist, but I just can't stand him. And I would say to him, I really got to get up early tomorrow. Could you turn it down a little bit? And could you stop, smoke outside? And he was a nice guy, but he was a stoner, right? So I can tell you, I'd much rather live in a micro suite by myself.
Yeah, big time.
Big time. I'm sure you'd be no different. And if you had a lady friend, you had to ask him to leave, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was just and like he was so crazy. You'd ask him to leave, and 5 minutes later he'd forget, and he'd come back.
Yeah.
Maybe the professor was entertaining a young woman at the time. I mean, Jesus, it was horrible. So I only did that for a year, and then I said I'm moving off campus.
No, exactly. And that's what we're seeing a big shift, and instead of the shared spaces, big shift into like your own room type thing.
100%.
Even bigger ones, like a lot of them. Because we've done a few student residents in London, and they say like it's first year, but as soon as people are in their second, third, fourth year, they don't want to share. They don't want to share apartment anymore. Blah blah. And a lot of these people, they're from overseas, so they have the money to pay for it and everything. Like the one we did in London, they did a kind of higher end student residence. And it's 4 people to a room, and they did a real nice job on the building, like stonework and everything. Kind of made it look like Western. And but it's funny, the parking lot's all just Mercedes, BMWs, Audis, everything. But so money's not an issue with these students coming over.
No, it's not. And I taught for many years at the University of Ottawa, so I have quite a bit of experience in this area. So, I can tell you that micro suites or nano suites, as UBC calls them, is the thing. The other thing that I think you would do in this building, believe it or not, because it's perfect for it, is you might. How many floors is it? How many stories?
4.
You might have on one story. Let's just bear with me.
Yeah, we're doing So first floor is the first floor front is going to be commercial.
Yeah.
And then we're actually like the little area, that building to the right, you didn't measure. We're actually one of the companies that lease one of our buildings is a brewery, so we're trying to get them
Oh, very cool, very cool. But here's what I'm thinking for that will help you maybe, because I've got some clients who are doing this kind of thing. So basically, I think we're talking about some kind of an atrium here. Correct?
Yep.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the atrium. And then you have your, maybe I didn't do it very well, but you have your micro suites, right? Probably the scale's all wrong, but you have your micro suites, like that. You got a million of these things. I don't know. I'm not even gonna do it. I'll screw it up. But there's your atrium. So what I'm thinking though is that on the ground floor, and we'll just look at the ground floor, in addition to, and this might help, in addition to having retail on the outside, because I find there's a lot of demand for smaller retail. So this might be retail, right? This in here might be one of my favorite things, because it doesn't need much work. In that building would be workshops. Because what you're going to find is that students, a lot of students are starting their own businesses. I used to teach entrepreneurship in the Topher School of Management. And one of the things I required from my students was that they had to start a business while they were studying with me, an actual business. And there are a lot of students and a lot of student entrepreneurs. So if you're looking for something where you don't need natural light and you want to fill up the space and you want to have demand for it, it's workshops, not offices.
Already got, yeah, we did that like kind of in all the dead spaces where units didn't do. We did because we were actually looking at student residence, or back during COVID is or even after COVID is like the live work situation type thing.
Fabulous.
So you have your apartment, but you also rent an office space on a different floor or the same floor, whatever.
Yeah.
And you go, and that's your designated office, and you could go work in there to get out of your apartment type thing, and you'd also rent that single office.
That is
so kind of, because there's a lot of, it's a weird shaped building and without windows and everything. So all the dead space, we kind of put offices or shared workspaces and stuff
That's
like that.
really, really good. I'm impressed. I mean, I can tell you, you are way ahead of the curve of probably 99.9% of the developers out there. Right now, you know, I don't know if I told you this, one of my clients came to me, he had a two-story office building completely vacant. I think I told you this.
No.
And he didn't know what to do with it. He couldn't find any office tenants. Then COVID hit, and he really couldn't find any office tenants. And he said, "What do I do?" And he came to me for some coaching. So I went and had a look at it. And it was really kind of a neat building. Kind of reminds me of the McCormick building. You know, it was very well built, but it was pretty run down, but very well built. I said, I know exactly what to do with this. What you do is you take out the hung ceiling, right? And you just clean it all up. You paint it off white. And it was already divided up into, you know, fire separated spaces, some as small as 600 square feet, some 1,200 square feet, and just open it up to the neighborhood for workshops.
Yep.
Within less than a year, we filled up that building. This is in downtown, not quite in downtown Ottawa, just outside of the downtown core. Filled it up like in remarkable, and he was getting better rents from more clients for workshops than he was for office space. Well, first of all,
really?
he didn't get any rent for office space because there wasn't any demand.
Yeah.
It's completely empty. But he was hoping to get, you know, for a B, or even it was probably a C class building. He was hoping to get, you know, $12, maybe $13 triple net, and he had no takers, and he lowered it to $10 and still no takers. When we went with workshops, he was getting gross $30 to $32 a square foot gross.
Oh, nice.
So he was doing, and it filled up, and you know, we're now past for a year or two, but he's never going to change. He said, "This is great." And the great thing about the workshops is, you know, they spill a little paint, you don't care. You know,
Yeah.
it's a workshop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, and they pay their bills and they don't complain. And if something goes wrong, they usually fix it themselves.
Yeah. No, exactly.
It's been fantastic. I really like this idea. All right, go back. We're almost done here. Give me one more sec. So what I did in this, again, this is very helpful because when we do a pitch, having these three projects, I'm only going to put in some slides on one.
Yeah.
But these projects to show people, to prospective investors, very important.
Exactly.
All right. So I put in here the McCormick building.
Oh, your other screen's sharing right now on Paint.
That's my fault. All right, sorry about that. So I put in our slide deck. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
So I put in
Yep.
the three projects, Athlon, Sally,
Yep.
and McCormick, but I'm only doing McCormick right now. Then I put
Yep.
in these measurements here. Then I put in for your ground floor, this live work thing. And then I'm going to put in here the UBC Nano Suites around circumference of building. Oh, shoot. Do you ever find yourself with cap locks?
Not that often.
I'm a terrible typist, but they now can fix that. around circumference of building and inward facing atrium, right? Because that's a brilliant suggestion, by the way, brilliant. All right, so you could build, and did you hear, I was wrong, I said 145 square feet, they were 140 square feet.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But by the way, I probably wouldn't build them that small in
No.
the building, but I wanted to show you that it is possible. And you saw the woman, she said, oh, this is great, right? So, all right, so let me I'll put in the floor plan here. So I want, I try and make these slide decks as comprehensive as possible.
Yeah.
Right, and anyway, you kind of get where I'm coming from, right?
Mhm.
So it'll be here. What are you doing after this coaching session?
Got about an hour drive back to the office.
Wow.
And then got to deal with a bunch of stuff I put off last week. So this stuff I gotta sit down, go through specs, and argue, blah blah. The joys of construction.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, I'm gonna put this here, and I'll put in. I'll actually put in the video for you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working with a guy, not in London. This afternoon I got another coaching session, and I'm forgetting what it is. He's putting in an offer on something. We're going to go through every aspect of the offer. We're doing a deal points memo and an offer and a bunch of other stuff. He's going to build student housing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I guess I can reuse the slides. All right. So, all right. Now we have 31 slides, Jeff. I'll share the slide deck with you. Okay.
Okay.
So the next step though is for you to, if you listen, I don't expect you to necessarily go through it all again, but if you don't mind, run your eyeballs through it again.
Mhm.
Reach out to a securities law lawyer. And that would be as soon as I don't know who it is, as soon as you're attorney and you have time, we'll get together for 45 minutes and just discuss some aspects.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I might do I guess I gotta do. I was thinking while we're going through those slides, I might put a little presentation slide together. One, to help myself better understand it, and then two, kind of I gotta explain this to my partners too.
Yes, I know.
Because it is big step forward rather than just getting LP for a single project.
Right.
So I think that's the next step. Get them bought into this, and then move this thing forward.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to push you too fast. I don't want to go fast.
No, I know. I like that.
I think that you will. This fund will make more money for you.
Yeah.
Faster than probably anything else you do if you run it properly, which I'm sure you will.
Yeah, no, I like that. No, but I say I like you pushing me, because sometimes I get lost in the tiny in the weeds. It's hard for me to move forward. So I do appreciate you pushing along.
That's part of my job as your coach and hopefully as a friend. But if you think about it, you've got a builder arm. Hopefully it makes money. You got a home builder company. Hopefully it makes money. You got a development arm. Hopefully it makes money.
Yeah.
What you're giving up though is all of the money that's available for financing those things.
Yes.
And that is, in terms of internal rate of return, in terms of maybe even total revenues to the company over the next 20 years, that's probably at least as big as the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And probably for less effort.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, there are complexities to running a private equity fund, but there's a reason why Brookfield is going out and raising $7 to $15 billion in fund number, whatever it is, 8 or 9, right? There's a reason they're doing it.
100%.
And there's no reason why. I mean, you're a very, very smart young man, and you can do it too. All right, I'll have this on YouTube within probably an hour. I'll send you the slide deck. You know what to do.
Okay, sounds good.
I see it.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.